When chaos forces conquer an imperial planet, they do not simply kill everyone and move on. That would be wasteful. Instead, they implement administrative systems designed to extract maximum value from human populations through methods that make conventional slavery look like a vacation resort. The conquered become raw material for a manufacturing process that produces suffering as efficiently as any imperial factory produces ammunition. This is the story of life under the yoke, where survival requires navigating bureaucracies that operate according to principles that would drive sane minds to madness. It begins with a census form written in blood and ends with the realization that death was always the kindest option available. The worlds that fall to chaos do not die. They are transformed into laboratories where humanity learns new definitions of pain. To understand why occupied worlds look like abattoirs wearing the mask of civilization, start at the beginning. Chaos conquest follows predictable patterns that have been refined through 10,000 years of perfecting institutional cruelty. The initial assault eliminates military resistance and destroys communication infrastructure, but it carefully preserves civilian populations and industrial facilities that can be repurposed for chaos objectives. The first phase is called Pacification, though the term bears no resemblance to its imperial counterpart. Chaos pacification involves the systematic identification and elimination of leadership elements within the civilian population. Planetary governors, hive nobles, guild masters, ecclesiarchy priests, and anyone else capable of organizing resistance. The elimination process is public, ritualized, and designed to demonstrate the futility of opposing the new order. Public executions are conducted in central locations using methods specifically chosen for their psychological impact on surviving populations. Imperial officials are typically crucified on monuments to imperial heroes, their bodies left to rot while demon-possessed voxcasters broadcast their screams throughout the city. The broadcasts continue for weeks after the victims have died, the demon voices perfectly mimicking human agony to maintain the illusion of endless suffering. Military veterans receive special attention during pacification operations. Former guardsmen are subjected to ritual tortures that invert their military training, forcing them to participate in ceremonies that mock imperial doctrine and desecrate sacred symbols. The ceremonies are designed to break the psychological conditioning that allows humans to function as soldiers, transforming disciplined warriors into broken shells who serve as object lessons for civilian populations. Ecclesiarchy personnel undergo conversion rituals that transform places of imperial worship into shrines dedicated to chaos gods. The conversion process requires the active participation of captured priests, who are kept alive through medical intervention while being forced to conduct blasphemous ceremonies that corrupt their own faith. The psychological torture is considered more valuable than simple execution because it demonstrates the power of chaos to corrupt even the most devout servants of the emperor. The second phase is called integration, which involves the establishment of new governmental structures that serve chaos objectives while maintaining the appearance of civilian administration. Integration preserves existing bureaucratic systems but replaces key personnel with cultists, demon-possessed officials, and humans who have been subjected to psychological conditioning that ensures their loyalty to the new regime. Existing laws remain in effect, but their interpretation and enforcement change dramatically. Imperial regulations that once protected civilian rights are reinterpreted to serve chaos objectives. Property laws become mechanisms for redistributing wealth to favored cultists. Labor regulations become tools for implementing work quotas that exceed human endurance. Safety standards become methods for identifying expendable populations that can be used for dangerous industrial processes. The legal system continues to function, but justice is redefined according to chaos principles that reward cruelty, corruption, and betrayal. Courts conduct trials using imperial legal procedures, but verdicts are determined by the entertainment value of the proceedings rather than evidence or testimony. Judges are selected for their creativity in devising punishments rather than their knowledge of law. Administrative efficiency improves dramatically under chaos occupation because the new government is not constrained by imperial concerns about human welfare or resource conservation. Bureaucratic procedures that once took weeks or months to complete are streamlined to operate in days or hours, though the accelerated pace comes at the cost of accuracy, fairness, and human life. The third phase is called optimization, which transforms civilian populations into productive assets for the chaos war machine. Optimization involves comprehensive population surveys that catalog individual skills, psychological profiles, physical capabilities, and potential usefulness for various chaos objectives. The surveys are presented as routine administrative procedures, but they serve as the foundation for systematic exploitation of human resources. Citizens are classified according to their utility for chaos operations: industrial workers who can operate manufacturing facilities, technical specialists who can maintain complex equipment, creative individuals who can produce propaganda and entertainment, and expendable masses who can be used for manual labor or ritual sacrifice. The classification system is updated regularly as circumstances change and new requirements emerge. Industrial workers receive enhanced rations and medical care to maintain their productivity, but they are subjected to work schedules that would be considered torture under imperial law. Manufacturing facilities operate continuously without maintenance breaks, safety inspections, or equipment replacement until catastrophic failure occurs. Workers who are injured by dangerous equipment are replaced immediately without medical treatment or compensation. Technical specialists enjoy relative privilege within the occupation hierarchy, but their expertise makes them valuable assets that cannot be allowed to escape or resist. Technical personnel are subjected to psychological conditioning that ensures their cooperation while preserving their professional capabilities. The conditioning process uses combinations of drugs, hypnosis, and targeted brain surgery to modify behavior without damaging cognitive function. Names matter here because each name decides a fate. Chaos occupation forces divide civilian populations into administrative categories that determine living conditions, work assignments, and life expectancy. The classification system operates with bureaucratic precision that would impress imperial administrators, though its objectives are diametrically opposed to imperial values. Productive primary designations are assigned to individuals whose skills are essential for maintaining industrial operations or providing services that support chaos military objectives. Primary classifications include factory supervisors, power plant operators, communication technicians, and medical personnel who can treat wounded chaos forces. Productive primary citizens receive enhanced food rations, private housing, and protection from random violence by occupation forces. The enhanced rations include protein sources that are not available to lower classifications, vitamin supplements that prevent malnutrition-related diseases, and stimulant additives that maintain alertness during extended work periods. The protein sources are typically derived from processed corpses of executed prisoners, though this information is not disclosed to the recipients. Citizens who discover the source of their protein rations are immediately reclassified to ensure information security. Private housing consists of individual rooms or small apartments that provide privacy and security from other civilian populations. The housing includes basic amenities such as running water, electrical power, and waste disposal systems that function reliably despite the general deterioration of urban infrastructure. Housing assignments are used as incentives to encourage cooperation and productivity among productive primary personnel. Protection from random violence is provided by designated chaos cultist enforcers who prevent unauthorized interference with productive primary citizens. The protection does not extend to authorized violence by occupation authorities, scheduled ritual activities, or recreational sadism by senior chaos officials. Productive primary citizens can be subjected to torture or execution at any time, but such actions require approval from administrative personnel to prevent the loss of valuable human resources. Productive secondary classifications include skilled workers whose capabilities are useful but not essential for maintaining critical operations. Secondary classifications include construction workers, transportation operators, food service personnel, and clerical staff who process administrative paperwork for the occupation government. Productive secondary citizens receive standard rations, shared housing, and limited protection from violence. Standard rations provide sufficient nutrition to maintain basic health and work capacity, though the food quality is significantly lower than enhanced rations provided to primary classifications. Standard rations typically consist of processed grain products, synthetic protein supplements, and recycled water that meets minimum safety standards. The food is nutritionally adequate but deliberately unpalatable to discourage hoarding or black market trading. Shared housing involves multiple families or individuals living in communal spaces that provide shelter but no privacy. Shared housing facilities include dormitories, converted office buildings, and residential complexes where walls have been removed to maximize occupancy density. Sanitation facilities are communal and often inadequate for the number of residents, leading to disease outbreaks that are considered acceptable losses by occupation authorities. Limited protection from violence means that productive secondary citizens are safe from random attacks by other civilians, but not from violence by chaos forces or authorized enforcers. Secondary citizens who witness or experience unauthorized violence can file complaints with administrative personnel, though the complaint process typically results in punishment for the complainant rather than investigation of the incident. Expendable general classifications encompass the majority of civilian populations who lack specialized skills or who have been deemed unreliable for productive work assignments. General classifications include unemployed individuals, elderly citizens, children below working age, and anyone who has displayed resistance to occupation policies. Expendable general citizens receive subsistence rations, mass housing, and no protection from violence. Subsistence rations provide the minimum nutrition necessary to sustain life for approximately 6 months, though individual survival time varies based on age, health, and activity level. Subsistence rations consist primarily of processed organic waste, synthetic nutrients, and contaminated water that has been treated to remove only the most immediately lethal toxins. The rations are designed to maintain life long enough for individuals to complete useful work assignments before dying from malnutrition or disease. Mass housing involves large numbers of people living in warehouse-like facilities with no individual space allocation. Mass housing consists of converted industrial buildings, sports stadiums, and purpose-built containment facilities where hundreds or thousands of individuals share minimal space and resources. Sanitation consists of open sewage systems that create health hazards that contribute to population reduction objectives. No protection from violence means that expendable general citizens can be killed, tortured, or abused by anyone with higher classification status without legal consequences. Violence against general classification citizens is considered recreational activity for occupation forces and productive entertainment for citizens with higher status levels. The violence serves multiple purposes: population control, psychological conditioning, and morale enhancement for favored groups. Expendable ritual classifications are reserved for individuals who have been selected for use in religious ceremonies dedicated to chaos gods. Ritual classifications include political prisoners, religious dissidents, individuals with specific physical characteristics required for particular ceremonies, and randomly selected citizens chosen to meet sacrifice quotas. Expendable ritual citizens receive ceremonial preparations, temporary enhanced treatment, and guaranteed death within specified timeframes. Ceremonial preparations vary depending on the specific ritual requirements and the preferences of the chaos god being honored. Preparations may include dietary modifications to enhance the spiritual significance of the sacrifice, physical modifications to create visual effects during the ceremony, or psychological conditioning to ensure appropriate emotional responses during the ritual process. Temporary enhanced treatment includes improved food, medical care, and living conditions designed to ensure that ritual subjects are in optimal condition for their ceremonial role. Enhanced treatment may last anywhere from days to months, depending on the complexity of the planned ceremony and the availability of alternative subjects. The enhanced treatment serves practical purposes rather than humanitarian ones. Healthy subjects produce better ceremonial results. Guaranteed death within specified timeframes provides ritual subjects with certainty about their fate while allowing ceremonial planners to schedule religious activities according to operational requirements. The death guarantee eliminates the psychological stress of uncertainty while ensuring that ritual subjects do not develop long-term survival strategies that might interfere with ceremonial objectives. On the ground, it reduces to a timetable and a heartbeat. Daily life under chaos occupation follows regulated schedules that maximize productivity while minimizing opportunities for resistance or escape. The schedules are enforced through surveillance systems, administrative controls, and violence that operates with mechanical precision. Morning begins at 0500 with mandatory assembly in designated areas where citizens receive work assignments, ration distributions, and administrative announcements. Assembly attendance is monitored through identification checks that track individual compliance with occupation policies. Citizens who miss assembly without authorized exemptions are subject to punishment ranging from ration reduction to summary execution depending on their classification level and previous disciplinary history. Work assignments are distributed based on classification status, skill requirements, and quotas established by occupation authorities. Assignments may involve industrial production, infrastructure maintenance, administrative support, or manual labor depending on current operational needs. Work assignments can change daily without notice, and citizens are expected to adapt to new requirements without training or preparation. Ration distributions follow strict protocols that ensure equitable allocation according to classification status while preventing hoarding or black market trading. Citizens receive precisely measured quantities of food and water that correspond to their productivity requirements and expected survival duration. Ration quality varies significantly between classification levels, with higher status citizens receiving recognizably edible food, while lower status citizens receive processed organic matter of uncertain origin. Administrative announcements include updates to occupation policies, changes in work quotas, notifications of public executions, and propaganda messages designed to maintain psychological control over civilian populations. Announcements are delivered through public address systems that have been enhanced with sonic weapons capable of causing physical pain to listeners who display inappropriate emotional responses. Work periods extend from 0600 to 2000 with minimal breaks for rest or sustenance. The 14-hour workday is standard across all classification levels, though productive primary citizens may receive additional rest periods if their work requires high concentration or technical precision. Work environments are designed to maximize output rather than worker safety, with accident rates that would be considered catastrophic under imperial administration. Industrial facilities operate at productivity levels that exceed equipment design specifications, with machinery running continuously until mechanical failure occurs. Worker safety equipment is considered an unnecessary expense that reduces profit margins, so protective gear is typically unavailable or non-functional. Industrial accidents are common and often fatal, but deceased workers are replaced immediately from expendable general populations without disrupting production schedules. Infrastructure maintenance involves repairing damage caused by the initial conquest, ongoing military operations, and deliberate sabotage by resistance groups. Maintenance work is performed under dangerous conditions using inadequate tools and insufficient safety precautions. Maintenance workers have high casualty rates due to exposure to hazardous materials, unstable structures, and booby traps left by retreating imperial forces. Administrative support requires civilians to process paperwork, maintain records, and provide clerical services that keep the occupation government functioning. Administrative work is considered relatively safe compared to industrial or maintenance assignments, but it requires literacy skills that are rare among civilian populations. Administrative workers are subject to performance monitoring that can result in reclassification or execution for errors or inefficiency. Manual labor involves construction projects, transportation services, and general maintenance tasks that do not require specialized skills. Manual labor assignments are typically given to expendable general citizens who are expected to work until physical exhaustion or death prevents further productivity. Manual laborers receive the lowest rations and have the shortest life expectancy of any classification group. Evening activities are strictly regulated to prevent unauthorized gatherings that might facilitate resistance planning. Citizens are required to return to designated housing areas by 2100 and remain there until morning assembly. Housing areas are monitored by surveillance systems and patrol units that enforce curfew restrictions through violence against violators. Recreation opportunities are provided to maintain psychological stability among productive citizens while ensuring that leisure activities do not interfere with work schedules or occupation objectives. Approved recreational activities include propaganda broadcasts, public executions, and organized competitions that reward cooperation with occupation authorities. Unauthorized recreational activities are punishable by death. Sleep periods are allocated based on classification status and work requirements, with higher status citizens receiving private sleeping areas, while lower status citizens share communal dormitories with inadequate sleeping surfaces. Sleep quality is deliberately degraded through noise, overcrowding, and psychological stress techniques designed to prevent rest periods from providing genuine recovery from work-related exhaustion. Then there is the moment everyone remembers and no one explains. I am standing in the ration line outside Distribution Center 7, watching the numbers on my classification card fade from the sweat of my palm. The card reads Expendable General Class C, Work Assignment Pending, which means I have perhaps 3 weeks before malnutrition reduces me to the point where I am no longer useful for manual labor. After that, I become eligible for ritual classification, which means death, but also means my suffering serves a purpose that extends beyond mere survival. The line stretches for 6 blocks through what used to be the merchant district of Hive Primus. The buildings still display faded imperial eagles and devotional inscriptions, but most of the windows have been bricked up and the doorways sealed with welded steel plates. The occupation authorities learned early that unsealed buildings provide hiding places for resistance cells and storage areas for contraband that might interfere with resource allocation objectives. Ahead of me, a woman with a productive secondary classification holds a child who cannot be more than 5 years old. The child has the distinctive pallor and distended stomach that indicates advanced malnutrition, symptoms that should not appear in dependents of secondary classification citizens who receive standard rations adequate for basic health maintenance. The woman keeps checking her classification card and adjusting her position in line, small movements that suggest she is aware that her child's condition might attract unwanted attention from the enforcers who monitor ration distributions. Behind me, an elderly man with hands that shake from stimulant withdrawal mumbles prayers to the emperor, in a voice barely above a whisper. The prayers are technically illegal under occupation law because they constitute unauthorized religious activity, but enforcement policies for minor infractions vary depending on the mood of individual enforcers and the entertainment value of potential punishments. The man probably knows that his prayers could result in immediate execution, but desperation drives people to take risks that rational analysis would reject. The distribution center was built in what used to be the Cathedral of St. Euphemia, a massive structure that once housed 10,000 worshippers during High Holy Day services. The nave has been converted into a warehouse for food storage, with the altar area serving as an administrative processing station where citizens present their classification cards and receive rations according to bureaucratic procedures that operate with mechanical efficiency. The stained glass windows have been replaced with armored transparasteel that blocks most natural light while providing clear sight lines for sniper positions on the surrounding buildings. The replacement windows display images of the Chaos Gods rendered in artistic styles that combine imperial iconography with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The images change throughout the day, according to schedules that correspond to ritual activities conducted in other parts of the city. I have been standing in this line for 4 hours, which is typical for expendable general citizens, but considered exceptional treatment compared to conditions in other occupied cities. On Mordian Prime, ration distribution requires 8-hour waits in lines that are frequently targeted by artillery bombardments as part of population control initiatives. On Valhalla, citizens wait outside in temperatures that kill approximately 10% of the waiting population each day. though the frozen corpses are processed into emergency rations that supplement the regular food supply. A commotion near the front of the line draws my attention as enforcers in riot gear emerge from the distribution center dragging a man whose classification card has apparently been revoked while he was waiting. Card revocation is a common administrative procedure that serves multiple purposes: punishment for minor infractions, random population reduction, and entertainment for other citizens who understand that they could be next. The man is approximately 40 years old with the calloused hands and chemical burns that indicate previous employment in industrial manufacturing. His productive secondary card has been replaced with an expendable ritual designation, which means he will be dead within 72 hours, but also means he will receive enhanced treatment during his final days. The enhanced treatment includes better food, private housing, and medical care, designed to ensure he is in optimal condition for whatever ceremony requires his participation. He does not resist as the enforcers attach restraints to his wrists and ankles. Resistance would be pointless because the enforcers are equipped with shock prods, neural disruptors, and projectile weapons that can incapacitate or kill without damaging tissues required for ritual purposes. More importantly, resistance would result in reclassification of his family members to expendable ritual status, which would mean multiple deaths instead of one. The enforcers march him toward a transportation vehicle that will deliver him to one of the ritual preparation facilities operated by the various chaos cults that have established operations in the city. The preparation process varies depending on which cult claims responsibility for his ceremony, but all preparation procedures are designed to maximize the spiritual significance of his death while providing psychological conditioning that ensures appropriate behavior during the ritual. As the vehicle drives away, the line resumes its slow movement toward the distribution center. The incident has taken approximately 10 minutes, during which time normal ration distribution was suspended. The delay will not be compensated by extending distribution hours or accelerating processing procedures, which means some citizens at the end of the line will not receive rations today. Citizens who miss ration distribution due to administrative delays are expected to wait until the next scheduled distribution without supplementary food allocation. The woman ahead of me adjusts her grip on her malnourished child and stares at the ground with the blank expression that indicates psychological shutdown as a response to unbearable stress. Her secondary classification provides her with enough rations to maintain her own health, but not enough to feed a dependent who is too young for work assignment. She has probably been sharing her rations with the child, which explains her own thin appearance and the desperate way she checks her classification card. The child will die within 2 weeks unless his condition improves dramatically, but improvement is unlikely given current ration allocation policies. When he dies, his death will be recorded as natural causes rather than starvation, because malnutrition is considered a pre-existing medical condition rather than a consequence of occupation policies. The woman will be required to dispose of the body according to sanitation regulations that prohibit burial ceremonies and require corpse processing through designated facilities. I reach into my pocket and feel the small piece of synthetic protein that I saved from yesterday's ration. The protein is roughly the size of my thumb and contains enough nutrition to sustain life for approximately 8 hours. I could give it to the woman for her child, but doing so would reduce my own survival time and might attract attention from enforcers who monitor citizens for signs of unauthorized charity or resistance activity. Unauthorized charity is considered subversive behavior because it interferes with resource allocation policies designed to maintain proper classification hierarchies. Citizens who share resources with lower classification individuals are subject to reclassification penalties that typically result in their own starvation or execution. The penalties serve as object lessons that discourage altruistic behavior while encouraging citizens to focus on individual survival rather than community welfare. I move the protein from my pocket to my palm and take a step forward in the line. The woman is 3 feet away, close enough to pass her the food without drawing attention from the surveillance cameras that monitor the distribution area. The child's eyes meet mine for a moment, and I see intelligence there despite the malnutrition, awareness that his condition is worsening and that adults around him are making decisions about his survival. Then I remember that I have not eaten in 36 hours and that my own survival depends on conserving every calorie for maximum utility. I remember that helping one child will not change the systematic policies that are killing thousands of children throughout the city. I remember that my death from starvation will not save anyone and will simply reduce the total number of people who might potentially survive until Imperial Liberation Forces arrive. I put the protein back in my pocket and stare at the ground until the line moves forward again. After the smoke clears, the rules return. Chaos occupation governments operate according to administrative procedures that maintain the appearance of legitimate authority while implementing policies designed to extract maximum value from human populations. The administrative apparatus functions with bureaucratic efficiency that rivals imperial institutions, though its objectives are antithetical to human welfare and dignity. Legal systems continue to operate under occupation, but justice is redefined according to chaos principles that reward behavior beneficial to occupation objectives while punishing actions that interfere with resource extraction or social control. Courts conduct trials using familiar procedures, but verdicts are determined by entertainment value and propaganda utility rather than evidence or legal precedent. Criminal law focuses on offenses against occupation authorities rather than crimes against individuals or property. Murder, theft, and assault are legal as long as they are committed against citizens with lower classification status and do not interfere with productive work assignments. Unauthorized religious activity, possession of imperial literature, and failure to meet work quotas are capital offenses that result in immediate execution or ritual sacrifice. Civil law governs property rights, contractual obligations, and family relationships according to principles that serve chaos objectives. Private property can be confiscated without compensation for any reason deemed appropriate by occupation authorities. Contracts are enforceable only when compliance serves occupation interests, and breach of contract penalties vary based on the classification status of the parties involved. Family law has been modified to discourage emotional attachments that might interfere with work productivity or create resistance motivations. Marriage requires approval from occupation authorities and can be terminated at any time for administrative convenience. Children belong to the state rather than their parents and can be reassigned to different families or work units without parental consent. Employment law establishes work quotas, safety standards, and compensation policies that maximize productivity while minimizing resource expenditure on worker welfare. Safety standards are designed to prevent industrial accidents that would damage equipment rather than protect workers from injury. Worker compensation consists of rations and housing allocation rather than monetary payment, with compensation levels determined by productivity metrics and classification status. Tax law requires citizens to contribute specified percentages of their resources to support occupation operations, with tax rates that vary based on classification status and ability to pay. Taxes are collected in the form of labor, resources, or human subjects for ritual activities rather than currency. Tax evasion is punishable by death, but tax assessment procedures are deliberately arbitrary to ensure that compliance is impossible for most citizens. Property law governs ownership, transfer, and use of real estate, personal possessions, and productive assets according to principles that concentrate wealth among occupation collaborators while impoverishing resistance sympathizers. Property ownership requires registration with occupation authorities and payment of fees that exceed the resources available to most citizens. Unregistered property is subject to immediate confiscation. Contract law enforces agreements between citizens and occupation authorities while providing no legal recourse for citizens who are defrauded or abused by government officials. Contracts with occupation authorities are binding regardless of coercion, fraud, or impossibility of performance. Citizens who breach contracts with occupation authorities are subject to criminal penalties, including execution and ritual sacrifice. Tort law has been eliminated entirely, which means that citizens have no legal remedies for injuries caused by negligence, intentional wrongdoing, or defective products. The elimination of tort liability reduces administrative overhead, while encouraging citizens to avoid situations where they might be injured by occupation personnel or equipment. Administrative law governs the operation of occupation institutions, including classification procedures, work assignments, ration distribution, and punishment systems. Administrative decisions are final and cannot be appealed, reviewed, or challenged through legal proceedings. Citizens who attempt to challenge administrative decisions are subject to immediate reclassification to expendable ritual status. Enforcement personnel operate under special legal authorities that permit them to kill, torture, or detain any citizen without legal justification or administrative oversight. Enforcement actions are considered necessary exercises of state authority rather than potential violations of individual rights. Citizens who resist enforcement actions are subject to summary execution, while citizens who cooperate may be rewarded with temporary improvements in classification status. Judicial personnel are selected for their entertainment value and creative approach to punishment rather than their knowledge of law or commitment to justice. Judges receive training in theatrical presentation, psychological manipulation, and torture techniques designed to maximize the educational impact of legal proceedings on civilian populations. Correction systems are designed to demonstrate the consequences of resistance while providing useful labor and experimental subjects for various chaos research projects. Correction facilities operate as combination prisons, laboratories, and entertainment venues where citizens can observe the fate of those who violate occupation policies. A few things still work, though none are kind. Civilian populations under chaos occupation develop survival strategies that operate within the constraints of administrative systems designed to prevent organized resistance while maximizing resource extraction. These strategies focus on individual survival rather than collective action, because group activities are monitored and suppressed by occupation authorities. Information management is critical for survival because citizens must navigate bureaucratic systems that change frequently and without notice. Citizens who maintain accurate information about classification procedures, work assignments, and enforcement policies have significantly higher survival rates than those who rely on outdated or inaccurate information. Information sources include official announcements, informal networks, and observation of enforcement patterns. Official announcements provide authoritative information about policy changes, administrative procedures, and legal requirements, but they are often delayed, incomplete, or deliberately misleading. Citizens must learn to interpret official information by analyzing what is not said rather than accepting statements at face value. Official announcements are designed to maintain compliance rather than provide useful guidance for survival. Informal networks consist of relationships between citizens who share information about survival strategies, resource opportunities, and enforcement threats. Informal networks operate through face-to-face communication and coded messages that avoid detection by surveillance systems. Network participation involves significant risks because unauthorized communication is considered subversive activity punishable by death. Observation of enforcement patterns allows citizens to predict when and where enforcement actions are likely to occur, which enables them to avoid situations that might result in arrest, punishment, or reclassification. Enforcement patterns vary based on quota requirements, personnel schedules, and arbitrary decisions by individual officers. But experienced citizens can identify recurring patterns that provide useful predictive information. Resource acquisition requires citizens to obtain food, shelter, and other necessities through official channels, while supplementing official allocations through unofficial methods that avoid detection by occupation authorities. Official resources are allocated according to classification status and administrative procedures that provide insufficient support for long-term survival. Unofficial resources must be obtained through methods that violate occupation policies, but may be necessary for survival. Official resource allocation includes ration distribution, housing assignment, and medical care, according to established procedures that provide documented access to authorized resources. Official resources are guaranteed but insufficient, which means that citizens who rely exclusively on official allocations will eventually die from malnutrition, disease, or exposure. Unofficial resource acquisition includes scavenging, trading, theft, and other activities that supplement official allocations with additional resources necessary for survival. Unofficial activities are illegal and punishable by death, but they may be necessary to obtain resources that are not available through official channels. Citizens must balance the risk of punishment against the certainty of death from resource shortages. Trading relationships involve exchanges of resources, information, or services between citizens who have complementary needs and capabilities. Trading relationships require trust and discretion because they involve illegal activities that could result in severe punishment if discovered. Successful trading relationships can provide access to resources that are otherwise unavailable, while distributing risk among multiple participants. Classification management involves actions designed to maintain or improve classification status through compliance with administrative procedures and demonstration of value to occupation authorities. Classification status determines access to resources, work assignments, and protection from violence, which makes classification management critical for survival. Classification status can change without notice based on administrative decisions, work performance, or arbitrary factors. Compliance strategies involve following occupation policies and administrative procedures, while avoiding actions that might result in punishment or reclassification. Compliance requires detailed knowledge of current policies and the ability to adapt quickly to policy changes. Perfect compliance is impossible because policies are deliberately contradictory and change frequently, but citizens must maintain the appearance of compliance to avoid attention from enforcement personnel. Value demonstration involves activities that make citizens useful to occupation authorities while avoiding actions that might be interpreted as resistance or subversion. Citizens who demonstrate value through productivity, cooperation, or specialized skills have better survival prospects than those who are perceived as expendable or troublesome. Value demonstration requires balancing usefulness against the risk of becoming too valuable to be replaced. Risk assessment involves evaluating the potential consequences of various survival strategies while making decisions about resource allocation, relationship management, and daily activities. Risk assessment requires understanding enforcement patterns, administrative procedures, and the priorities of occupation authorities. Citizens who make poor risk assessments typically die quickly, while those who assess risks accurately may survive long enough to develop more sophisticated strategies. Social camouflage involves blending into civilian populations while avoiding actions that might attract attention from enforcement personnel or surveillance systems. Social camouflage requires understanding behavioral norms, dress codes, and communication patterns that are considered acceptable by occupation authorities. Citizens who stand out from normal populations are more likely to be selected for negative attention. Psychological endurance involves maintaining mental stability and emotional control under conditions designed to break human spirits and destroy individual identity. Psychological endurance requires techniques for managing stress, trauma, and despair while maintaining the cognitive abilities necessary for survival. Citizens who suffer psychological breakdown typically die quickly because they become unable to navigate survival requirements effectively. Step back far enough and the pattern refuses to blink. Chaos occupation represents the logical conclusion of imperial governance, stripped of pretense and optimized for efficiency. The administrative systems that sustain occupation governments are fundamentally identical to imperial bureaucracies, differing only in their objectives and the honesty with which they acknowledge their true purposes. Imperial systems extract resources from civilian populations through taxation, conscription, and industrial production while maintaining the fiction that government serves the welfare of its citizens. Chaos systems extract resources through identical mechanisms while acknowledging that government exists to serve the interests of those in power rather than those who are governed. The efficiency gains achieved by chaos occupation demonstrate the potential productivity improvements that could be realized by imperial systems that eliminated unnecessary humanitarian constraints. Chaos administrators achieve resource extraction rates that exceed imperial benchmarks by factors of 3 to 5. proving that humanitarian concerns are obstacles to administrative efficiency rather than essential features of civilization. The psychological impact of chaos occupation on civilian populations provides valuable data about human behavioral responses to extreme stress and systematic oppression. The data has applications for imperial intelligence operations, military psychology research, and social control techniques that could improve the effectiveness of imperial governance in contested territories. The survival strategies developed by civilians under occupation provide insights into human adaptability and resilience that have implications for imperial military planning and population management policies. Citizens who survive extended periods under chaos occupation develop skills and knowledge that could be valuable for imperial forces operating in hostile environments. The administrative innovations implemented by chaos occupation governments include efficiency improvements and resource optimization techniques that could be adapted for imperial use with minor modifications. The innovations prove that significant improvements in governmental effectiveness are possible when administrators are freed from traditional constraints on their authority and methods. The lesson learned from studying chaos occupation is that the difference between imperial governance and chaos governance is primarily aesthetic rather than substantive. Both systems prioritize institutional objectives over individual welfare. Both use violence to enforce compliance with administrative policies. And both treat human beings as resources to be consumed in pursuit of strategic goals. The only meaningful difference is that chaos systems acknowledge their true nature, while imperial systems maintain elaborate fictions about serving the common good. Chaos administrators are honest about their contempt for human dignity and their commitment to maximizing resource extraction regardless of human cost. Imperial administrators maintain the pretense that their policies serve humanitarian objectives while implementing identical resource extraction strategies. Your comfortable delusions suddenly look fragile. Citizens of imperial worlds who complain about taxation, conscription, and administrative inefficiency have never experienced governance that operates without humanitarian constraints. They have never lived under systems that optimize for efficiency rather than maintaining popular support through democratic institutions and civil liberties. They have never experienced administrative systems that acknowledge human beings as livestock rather than citizens with rights and dignity. They have never been classified according to their utility for institutional objectives rather than their status as individuals with inherent worth and legal protections. They have never navigated bureaucracies that operate according to principles of maximizing suffering rather than minimizing inconvenience. They have never submitted applications to agencies that evaluate requests based on entertainment value rather than legal compliance and regulatory requirements. Chaos occupation teaches that human dignity is a luxury that governments provide only when they lack the power to eliminate it entirely. Civilization is not the natural state of human society, but rather an artificial constraint on institutional efficiency that persists only as long as those in power find it useful for achieving their objectives. The machine grinds forward because efficiency serves power and power serves itself. The machine does not distinguish between imperial eagles and chaos stars because symbols are irrelevant to administrative function. The machine processes human beings into resources according to procedures that work regardless of the ideological framework used to justify them. Service is mandatory under any system that possesses the power to enforce compliance. Obedience is extracted through methods that vary in sophistication but not in effectiveness. The only choice available to individuals is whether they prefer their oppression to be honest or disguised. Hope defaults because it was never legal tender.